Launched for the first time in 1997 to recognize the highest level of strategy, creativity, and professional excellence in public relations, the Prism Awards have become the benchmark upon which public relations professionals seek to judge themselves against best practice. The introduction of 2 new African-focused categories in 2015 and the almost 20% increase in entries is evidence of the continued growth of the awards. Well, to discuss, I have with me Daniel Munslow, Principal Consultant of the VMA Group. Hello and welcome. Great to have you on the show, Daniel.
Thank you very much for having me. Great to be here.
Is there truth to what I just said?
There is most absolutely truth in what you said.
You agree with those statements?
I absolutely do. The Prism Awards recognize excellence in the industry, and it's an opportunity not only to benchmark ourselves against ourselves in the industry, but also to benchmark ourselves against global best practice. It's an opportunity to look at all the great work that agencies and consultancies are doing within the space. Everything from CSI campaigns to crisis communication to PR on a shoestring. And we know with all the downward pressure on budgets how important that is, and that was a growing category. So it really does benchmark excellence.
How specifically has it set new benchmarks?
You know, over the years of judging, it's a wonderful opportunity to see people growing in the industry. And the process of judging allows entrants to get constructive criticism and comments on the quality of work that they put out there. So every entry gets judged rigorously by a panel of judges, between 4 and 6 judges that judge each entry. And that feedback goes straight back to the entrants. On the back of that, they're given the opportunity to really look at the trouble spots that they experienced and focus on the strengths that they entered. And in years to come, and I've certainly seen it over the years of judging, they then take that feedback on board and create great campaigns going forward in years to come.
I was actually at the recent Prism Awards, and it was really phenomenal being there, you know, getting exposure to the innovativeness in the campaigns that were put forward. As a chief judge, what really struck you about this year's awards?
I think there were 2 things about this year's awards that stuck out in particular, and that is the quality of work coming out for PR on a shoestring. And in that category, we had quite a number of entries that were given extremely low budgets by clients, and they had to come up with very, very creative execution on traditional PR campaigns. And I think the creativity that's taking place in the industry, sometimes by force, in terms of the fact that the downward pressure on budgets is having an impact on the output of work and the scope of work that can be done, but I think also on the CSI front. I think with the need in the country to focus on corporate social investment, we're seeing a fantastic selection of entries of people doing great work to uplift the industry, almost create a future middle class, if I could put it that way. And if I just look at a campaign like Ogilvy's campaign with KFC, the Add Hope campaign, they did an incredible initiative, and it's all around, and most of the viewers would probably be familiar with adding 2 rand to a meal at KFC, but it really creates an opportunity to feed children that otherwise literally couldn't eat. And they've put millions of plates of food on the table across South Africa for previously disadvantaged people. I'm sure
all of us are familiar with that,
yes.
With that campaign.
Yeah.
It's amazing that it was actually to know now. This is the first time I actually know that this is a PR initiative.
It is. It's an integrated communication initiative with a huge focus on public relations. And in terms of creating thought leadership around it, creating innovative thought or ideas around the campaign, supported by a very strong marketing and advertising campaign. But obviously, from a Prism point of view, they were very careful to enter the PR focus. And as I say, to create a better South Africa out of the outcome of those initiatives was fantastic to see.
I'm sure working with shoestring budgets has become the norm, given the direction the economy is taking right now. What are some of the other challenges the industry is experiencing around budgets?
In February, we conducted a piece of research. We were fortunate enough to get about 400 respondents from 250 companies, including agencies. And we identified 5 key challenges that emerged from that. The first one was downward pressure on budget. And about 58% of communicators said they experience a downward pressure on budget. And I think that's very reflective of the broader macroeconomic space that people find themselves in. The second one, very interestingly, is the complexity of audiences that we speak to. Certainly in South Africa, we have such diversity across the country. And that enables PR practitioners to be very strategic in the way in which they think about landing messages to the publics. So that is also an opportunity, I think, in terms of those complexity of audiences. The third one is skills shortages and the challenge of finding really, really strong talent at the moment within the industry. The fourth one is the challenge around leadership communication.
Is that because of higher salary expectations?
I think
when it comes to the skills side of it?
I think that's a component of it. But I also think in terms of where the industry is going and the skills that communicators need to be relevant in 2020 and 2025, it's no longer just the traditional public relations and communication skills, but businesses are looking for business-related skills. They're looking for skills of business acumen, basic financial skills, looking at a background of a little bit of economics, looking at greater strategic insight, not only creative and writing skills. So there's a shifting skill set that's required in the industry moving forward.
So our current graduates, not prepared for those kind of challenges in terms of what the industry requires?
Not entirely and not yet. And I think the curriculums are evolving to equip the students that are going into the industry tomorrow in the next couple of years with greater skills around the more business side of communication as opposed to just traditional communication. You know, everything from crisis communication, it's all about understanding the business acumen and understanding the business strategy above all else. So I think we are definitely seeing a shift around that. And one of the biggest shifts and the next challenge is also around leaders' inability to communicate effectively with their publics, and also, or certainly from what the respondents were saying, the lack of leadership visibility during times of crisis, during times of change. So one of the skill sets therefore required of communicators is to equip the leaders with those skills and coach them and mentor them to come out and be visible.
Is that one of the criteria for the awards itself, crisis management and how to deal with a crisis situation from a communications perspective?
Absolutely. It's one of the categories that people enter around crisis communication, and we've certainly seen our lion's share of crisis, specifically in social media, in the last couple of months, and we've seen a very satisfactory number of entries coming in the crisis communication space, and I suspect that in the 2017 entries, we're going to see quite a few of the campaigns that had to manage crisis between 2015 and 2016, but we're definitely seeing an area around that. And leadership plays a key role in managing the crisis.
And how do you measure that? How do you measure crisis management?
I think one of the ways, it's a very complex question, but very, very quickly, it would be around the length of time that it lingers in the media and the length of time that it takes to resolve a crisis, and obviously measuring the company's reputation and people's perceptions of the leader over the period of that crisis. And I think companies can do a lot to manage their reputation more effectively during times of crisis, specifically if you adopt a very, very quick, very robust three-step approach. The first one is acknowledge what happened and admit to it if there is a requirement to admit. The second one is clarify the facts, focus on accuracy, and correct facts if there are facts that need to be corrected. Very often, certain things potentially are blown out of proportion. Just set the record straight. And the third one, on the back of the second one, what are you going to do about it? So be very transparent about, yes, this happened, we acknowledge it, these are the facts, and assist in setting the agenda moving forward, and then say, on the back of that, this is what we're doing, and then act on it. We're certainly seeing that in the Mitsubishi Motors crisis comms developing story that's happening at the moment, and how quick the CEO was to take personal ownership and accountability of the situation.
That is key. I always say that is key to crisis management. There's only so much a PR practitioner can achieve when it comes to, ending negativity around a brand.
Absolutely.
It comes down to the chief executive.
It does. And in their case, within 7 days, they're going to produce a report. That's obviously a government now requirement, but the fact that the CEO was there, he was the voice of the situation, and he took ownership for what was happening. And I think that's an excellent step in the right direction to see things like that.
Technological innovation is playing a very prominent role in driving change in this industry. Are we seeing that impact on media messages? To some degree?
Without a doubt. What we're also seeing is not only technology, but specifically the social media components around that, and virtually every entry, I'm just thinking back to all of those entries, virtually every entry had a component in one way or another around social media.
There's a big interest around video on demand content right now.
Extremely.
And I suppose companies also looking into that, wanting to reach out directly to their brand communities over and above approaching the media, the mainstream media.
Yeah, it's looking
that gives them more control as well over their messages.
It does.
Doesn't it?
It does, but it also enables a wonderful sense of community among among the publics that they're speaking to, whoever their stakeholder groupings are, and whatever platform they choose to use. So, for example, if it's a more corporate message, you might find it on LinkedIn. If it's a more consumer brand-related message or competition, you might find it more on Facebook. But irrespective of the platform, there's no doubt that the majority of what we would have considered traditional public relations initiatives a few years ago are now finding their way into the social space as well.
And is that coming through in budgets as well, budget allocations, the need to develop more video online content?
There is, but that's slower on the back of the fact that there is such an immense downward pressure on budgets. And the pressure on budget isn't only in terms of giving budget to agencies to execute campaigns, but it's also internal budgets. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations are cutting their budgets on training. The research showed that 58% of companies are cutting their budgets on training, while very interestingly, 55% of people say that the number one reason for leaving the company is a lack of training and career development.
Very insightful. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure.